everyone, it's Hara in Korea, and today I just wanted to make a video about things that really annoy me about working at a Hagwon. Alright, so before I really get into this video, I kind of just want to, state a couple things. One, I actually really very much enjoy my job, and I feel like every job has things that annoy you, and so these are kind of those things. And the reason why I'm making this video is because when I first came to Korea and I was like first starting teaching, like I had no teaching experience whatsoever. So these are the things that really drove me insane, the things I was not used to, the things that really I thought were gonna push me over the edge. And so I get stressed out very easily. I don't handle stress well. I literally just go insane. But when you see my face when I'm handling stress, it looks like, oh, Brianna's totally fine. But inside, I'm telling you, I'm running around like that SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob was just trying to find out his name or whatever. And everything was on fire. That's how I feel like is going on inside of me. But on the outside, you'd never know I was having a panic attack. So I do not handle stress well, but with that being said, I do still feel like all these things that I'm going to mention are things that really were just so overwhelming to me. And I've spoken to a bunch of Hagwon teachers. I have a lot of friends who are teachers also. And so we kind of all agreed that these are the things that just were really a lot to handle in the beginning. And my school year just started again, so we got a bunch of new teachers, and I feel so bad because I'm watching them go through exactly what I went through in the beginning of teaching at a Hagwon. And I'm like, I feel so bad for you because I know it gets easier. You kind of just get used to the madness, but in the beginning, those first couple months just seem so insane. So I'm here to tell you the things that annoy me about working at a Hagwon, and these things still annoy me. They're still kind of there, but you just get used to them. They're annoying, but it's oh, that's just another day at the job, I guess. So yes, these things still bother me, but it's not a deal breaker for my job anymore. So the first thing that bothers me, I'm not going in any particular order, is that it's just kind of expected of you to stay late or come in early at your job. So my contract is from 9 to 5:30, but if I don't get the work done from 9 to 5:30, it's expected that I'm just either gonna come in early or stay late to get the work done, and I'm not getting paid more for it. So what I mean by that is the amount of prep work that I have to do for my students, to me, cannot possibly be done in the time frame that I'm given, especially in the beginning of the year, and especially if you're a new teacher and you have no idea what's going on. So I am not a new teacher anymore. I've been here for a year at this particular school, and then I worked at another school for a year, but still, it's kind of hard to keep up with everything. I come into work, usually depending on the day, I try to get there at 8:30, but I'm a very late sleeper, so I usually get there around 8:30 to 8:40, and that's just kind of expected of you. And I usually stay until about 6 to 6:30 because there's so much stuff to do and so much stuff to prep. So only a few days out of the week do I actually go home at 5:30, which is my contract time. So what am I doing during this time, you might ask? Well, there's just 500 things to cut out, 500 projects to prepare. It's insane, the amount of things that we have to do. And I know every Hagwon's different, so some Hagwons might not have as much prep work for you to do, but I still feel like all Hagwons expect you to get the work done, whether you're getting it done in the hours or you have to take it home to do it. At my first Hagwon, I didn't have a bunch of prep work, but I had so many books to grade. I was carrying home bags and bags of books all the time to grade them, and it was driving me crazy. So when I got this other Hagwon job, I was like, yes, I don't have any books to grade, but now I have so many things to cut out and just stuff like that. And it might not seem like a big deal, but I really do put in all of my effort and all of my energy into working from 9 to 5:30. I give all of my love and all of my attention to the kids. And if I have to take work home, you just want to leave work at work. If I'm at work for that many hours of the day and then having to come home and still do more work, even if it's just me idly cutting out things, I'm still working. And so it can be kind of difficult. I've kind of just got used to it. If I have to bring work home, I'll put on a TV show or something and I'll just have a great time cutting out stuff. I've learned to love just cutting paper, and I love cutting laminating paper now, but it's still a lot, and it was a lot to handle in the beginning, and I don't know, it can be stressful. So I'm just saying, if you're going to work at a Hagwon, there's a good chance that it'll just be expected of you that you're going to either stay late or come in early, and you're not going to be paid for it. Okay, the second thing that I was not prepared for at all when it came to teaching at a Hagwon was the fact that we have to inform the parents about everything. And now I understand parents are nervous and scared sending their kids off to school. I get that, and I get there is some level of information that needs to be shared with them. Like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be telling the parents some things, but at my Hagwon, and I feel like at a lot of Hagwons, the amount of things that you have to tell the parents is borderline ridiculous. So when I was growing up, you know, if I got like a paper cut or a tiny scratch, or one time I literally just decided to staple my fingers, like, nobody knows about these things. Like, if it wasn't serious, my mom didn't find out about these things until I went home and I told her a few hours later, something like that. And even after that, she wasn't calling my teacher like, hey, what happened? Why didn't you tell me about this? But like in Korea, if my kid even gets the tiniest of a scratch, we have to take a picture of the scratch. Then my co-teacher is either texting the mom, or after all the students leave, she ends up calling the parents too to explain the situation and what happened. And sometimes the parents are very understanding, like, oh, it's okay. But other times the parents like freak out. Like one time I had this little girl who she just bites her nails until they bleed, and there's nothing we could do about it. Like, we tried to stop her, we put band-aids on them all the time, but it just wasn't working. And so every time like her nails would start bleeding, we'd have to send like a picture to the mom, and mom would be like, oh, can you like please try to get her to stop biting her nails? I was like, it's really hard, it's just not that easy. And I also feel like the mom knows that her daughter bites her nails, so we shouldn't have to send a picture every time. But if the kid would go home and we didn't send a picture of the nails, the mom would then call and be like, why didn't you send me a picture of this? I'm like, don't you know your daughter bites her nails all the time anyway? Like, why is this such a big deal? Just things like that. Like, if a student is ever like, again, has a tiniest like scratch, tiniest little injury, like just tiny, like if it's something, you know, not even a little bit serious, just if it's something more than tiny, I get why we inform the parents. But for things that don't even draw blood and the tiniest scratches, like, it's the biggest deal, and we're calling all these parents, like just being like, hey, this is what happened. Or like if two kids get in an argument and that was it, they just got in a tiny little argument, my co-teacher has to call the moms and tell them the exact situation. So my co-teacher spends a lot of her time on the phone just explaining situations to the mom, like to the moms, and I'm like, you guys really have to know everything. Like, I don't get it. And I know parents are worried about their kids, and I get that, but it just seems like everything's informed to them, versus I feel like in America it's kind of a little more chill. Another thing that really bothers me about working at a Hagwon that I just wasn't expecting this, is parents' expectations of their kids' work. So I teach 4-year-old students, and it's their first time going to a private school. Like, it's their first time to learn English. So you know they're not going to be that good at learning English, at speaking, and they're 4 years old. They're not going to be great at coloring or cutting things out or gluing things. Like, it's not going to be great. And it's just so annoying because parents don't want to see what their 4-year-old student can do. Parents want to see what a teacher can do, apparently, because literally my students, like, we give them the project materials, we prepare all the project materials for them, and we have to take pictures of them doing the project because the parents want to see exactly what their kid's doing at school. And like, once we get the picture, we pretty much take the project away from the kid and we fix whatever they didn't make look nice. So if my student didn't color nicely, I just color over it again. Like, if my student couldn't glue the things correctly, I just glue it again for them. Like, it's just ridiculous. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to see what your 4-year-old student can do versus what I can do? And granted, they don't know that we're changing it, but if I were to send it home like the way that the 4-year-old student did, the parent would just complain and be so upset about it. So it's like kind of expected. Like, my principal expects us to change it, like my supervisor expects us to change it. Like, if things don't look a certain way, the teacher is just expected to change it so that it looks good. And I'm just like, to me, it's just ridiculous. Like, my 4-year-old students, they cannot write on the line, they can barely hold a colored pencil, they certainly can't hold a pencil and write neatly on the lines. And so a lot of the times, like, I used to think that things were written fine, and I would be like, oh, this is fine to send home. But then, you know, my supervisor would come in, she'd be like, no, 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 they have to write exactly on the lines. This is what a lowercase k looks like, and they need to write it exactly like this. And I was like, is she joking? Like, does she really expect these kids who are just picking their nose, jamming pencils in their ears, to be able to write on the lines perfectly? And she wasn't joking. So it's impossible to get these kids to do this. Like, I was stressing out my students, being like, no, you gotta erase it, you gotta erase it, you gotta do it again, you gotta do it again. And eventually me and my co-teacher just looked at each other one time during class and we're like, we can't keep having the kids erase things 10 times. So eventually, if we had the kids try it a couple times and they couldn't do it by themselves, I would either just grab their hand and do it with them, or at the end of the day, I would just like take the papers that had mistakes on them and erase it. And then I would try to write like a 4-year-old would write if the 4-year-old was like a prodigy, basically. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I'm trying to make my handwriting look like the equivalent of a really, really, really smart 4-year-old. And I'm like, why do I have to do this? Why can't parents just accept like, oh, my student's 4 years old. Maybe when they're 6 years old, they'll be able to do this nicely. No, it's like, I'm sending my student to you and I expect them to be perfect when they come out. Like, again, like I said, my students speak no English when they come to me. And about 1 or 2 months in, I would have parents asking my co-teacher like, my child's not really speaking English that well at home. Like, what's the problem? They've only been learning English for 2 months. Like, you should be proud that they're saying anything in English. And so, again, this is something that I've gotten used to. It took a long time and it was very stressful for me. But now that I'm used to it, I just know what the parents expect. I know what kind of work I can send home. Like, I just know what I'm supposed to do. But in the beginning, it drove me crazy. All right, the last thing that really annoys me about working at a Hagwon, and I would say this is probably the top thing that annoys me about working at a Hagwon, is last minute changes. And I get it, lots of jobs have last minute changes, but I feel like Hagwons just take it to the extreme. So to give an example, like, I will literally be seconds from teaching a lesson. Like, the lesson will be like within 5 minutes. Like, I've prepared everything for this lesson, it's all ready to go, and I have no backup plan. Like, that's my lesson, why would it change? And then I get a text message, and we are expected to check our phones during class because there's always last minute changes going on. And I'll get a text message like, hey, can you teach a lesson this way instead? Can you add this to the lesson? Can you maybe scratch that project that we planned for, and can you do this project instead? And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, of course. Right on it. Like, it is so annoying. Like, I feel like you have to be ready to do things at the spur of the moment all the time because things are just changing constantly. Like, there will be times when I don't really have a lot of prep work during my week. Like, I teach from 9 to 4:45 with my elementary classes. So basically from like 5 to 5:30, that's my prep time. And if I decide to stay later or come in earlier, that's my prep time. So when 5 o'clock hits, I'm literally prepping so much stuff. Like, I'm typing crazily, like I'm cutting out stuff like it's nobody's business. And then I'll get a text message like, hey, we have a meeting right now. Hey, we gotta talk about this right now. And I'm like, I don't have time for these changes. Like, I don't mind meetings if, you know, they're planned in advance. And I understand that sometimes there are things, you know, I understand sometimes there's last minute changes, but this is literally on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. Like, things are just changing all the time and it drives me crazy. Like, I really don't even understand how I handle it. Like, in the beginning, I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And I see all the new teachers at my school basically being like I was in the beginning. And now, like, me as a teacher who's been there for a little bit, I'm kind of just like, oh yeah, of course, last minute changes, bring them on. You got any more last minute changes for me? Great, I love last minute changes. But like, I know I'm just used to it, but in the beginning it was crazy. So even though there are all these things that annoy me, all these things that drive me crazy with like the outside part of teaching, like not the actual in the classroom with the kids teaching, like all the, you know, administrative, you know, meeting type of stuff and prep work, that stuff drives me insane. But the actual teaching, the kids, and loving the students, I love doing that. So even though I am annoyed a lot of the time at my job, I do like my job because the students make it worth it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and if you did, tell me about it in the comment section below, what you liked, what you didn't like, any of your experiences teaching at a Hagwon. And also make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.